Today's This Week in Startups is brought to you by Walker Corporate Law, a boutique law firm specializing in the representation of entrepreneurs. Visit them at walkercorporatelaw.com. And HostGator, your one-stop shop to getting your business online. Your domain name, your website design, and even your marketing. They've got you covered. Have questions? Their team is there 24/7 via chat, phone, and email to help you. Start today with 30% off with coupon code TWiST. Today, Jason Shellen, product at Pinterest and former founder of Boxer and Hike Labs, talks to the Launch Incubator about decks done right and the importance of storytelling in pitching your product.
That's what it's all about, man. They said money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah. Money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
So what are we here to do, and why am I talking about decks and stories and all that sort of stuff? When I was talking to Jason Kalkanis about his launch incubator, I said, what do they need to hear? What advice would you like for folks to hear? And he said, well, at the end of the day, every single one of these companies is going to go out and they're probably going to raise money, and so I would love it if you would actually present for them like one of the decks that you've used to raise money. And so I started to think about that and unpack that a little bit, and we started talking about what a deck represented. And what I really think a deck represents is your story, right? Each one of you who had gotten up here tonight had told a story, and a lot of my critique or criticism was centered around a little bit of that story, right? Did it have a good arc and all that sort of stuff? So a lot of times when we're thinking about fundraising or going out to get money to help fund the next piece of our business, we can get really hung up on this slide or this information being in there, or like, okay, make the font bigger or make the logo bigger and all that sort of stuff. But we don't really think about, let's tell a great story. So I thought I'd talk to you about that tonight. First of all, what are you trying to accomplish with the raise? What are you trying to accomplish with your company? These are all like deep existential things that you need to think about before you even open up Keynote most of the time, or PowerPoint. So I thought I'd start out by telling my story. So before I get into all of the products and things like that I've worked on in the past, I wanted to tell you a little bit about me. I'm a Bay Area kid. I grew up in Fremont, California. My dad was in the tech industry. He was, he retired a couple years ago as like a network engineer. So he was never somebody who was, building on top of things. He was always sort of working on things, but that meant that he was bringing home technology, right? I had a 40 megabyte hard drive at home that was like, looked like a salad spinner when I was like 5 years old, and was like, these are amazing. Where I gravitated towards naturally was actually the graphic art, so graphic design. I thought I wanted to design magazines for the rest of my life, and I went to a local college here. I have my fine arts degree. I don't have a computer science degree. I went to St. Mary's College in the Oakland Berkeley Hills, and right before I graduated, I took this really unique course called Web Publishing, and this was January of 1996. There was one browser to speak of in the world, and that was Netscape 2.0, and I was taught how to code in HTML. And I thought, this is amazing, because having been involved with graphic design for a while, I knew that publishing was hard. If I wanted to print t-shirts, I would design something in CorelDRAW or Adobe Illustrator, and I would take it down to the press. And after being at the press, they could say, oh, this smeared, we're gonna have to rerun everything. Or if there were more than one color involved, they would like pull the ink down, and anyway, it was a mess. The moment I was able to take a piece of art that I had created, put a little bit of code, FTP it up to our local web server, and see it online, I knew immediately when I did not like what I saw, when I thought, oh, that should be a little to the left or a little to the right, that this was powerful, that this was actually putting publishing in the hands of everyone, and that everyone should be able to have this power. And it took a couple years after graduation to find the right company to work with. But eventually, in the year 2000, I had already had a little bit of experience in technology, working in hardware, enough to recognize that Blogger was going to be transformative, and that this was something that I really wanted to work on. I worked on it during some of its darkest days, but eventually we sold the company in 2003 to Google. Spent a lot of time there working on a number of different things that I'm happy to tell you about at some other time. But suffice it to say, Blogger was a huge success, and we were able to get our message across even more so at Google. In 2008, I started a company called Thing Labs. And Thing Labs had a number of different products, but the one that we most focused on was Brizzly. And it was a Twitter reader, it was a Facebook reader, it did a lot of different things. But it did that because we had a bunch of former Google Reader engineers on our team who were fantastic. And one of the last things we added into the product was group messaging. Who knew that would be huge? And we attracted the interest of AOL, and they wanted to have us come in and remake AIM using a lot of the technology we had and using some of the wonderful people we had on our team. But you know, a couple years in, I was slightly disenchanted with life at AOL. I left and started an email app called Boxer. This is not exited. They're actually just doing really, really well, and it's actually the pitch deck that I'm going to show you later today was the arc from the angel raise to that Series A round. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But after working on this for a little bit, the team is in Austin, Texas. I left it in their capable hands. I'm still an advisor today. But I moved on to create something else. Started a little company called Hike Labs. I say little because that was literally 2 people. And about 9 months into our mission, the folks at Pinterest came calling and said, we'd really like you both over here at Pinterest. So I'm now in product at Pinterest and working on, I make all the pins. That's what I do.
And that is a great segue to thank my good friend Scott Walker for sponsoring This Week in Startups. Of course, he's with the Walker Corporate Law Group, which is a boutique law firm that specializes in the representation of entrepreneurs and startups like you and me. And they encouraged fixed fees. That's right. They'll do a flat rate fixed fees so that you know how much you're going to wind up spending on incorporating, mergers and acquisitions, licensing agreements, terms of service, privacy policies, raising money, all that stuff. Scott really takes the time to work with entrepreneurs and make sure they understand what they're doing. And all of the people at his boutique law firm have 10 to 20 years of experience. He is a great guy. He's been sponsoring the program. I think he might be the longest continuous sponsor of the program now. It's like 4 or 5 years. And you can call him directly, founder to founder, 415-979-9998. 415-979-9998. Scott at Walker Corporate Law. Scott at Walker Corporate Law is his direct email, and it's Walker Corporate Law Group. And you can follow Scott on the Twitter. Scott Ed Walker is his Twitter handle. And go ahead and thank at Scott Ed Walker for sponsoring independent media like This Week in Startups. Couldn't do it without you. Thank you, Scott.
So let's talk a little more about pitches. Facts get boring quickly, right? So I just took you through my life history, and there were a lot of facts mixed in there. But just remember, as you're giving a pitch, that you are telling that story and that you want a beginning, a middle, and an end. And everyone loves to root for a good story, right? They want it to work out well. Behind us, I don't know if you'll be able to see on video, we have some people in a car and they're wearing Giants outfits. If you've been here on Market Street when the Giants have won the World Series, everyone loves to come out at the end of the story and hoot and holler and drink beer and all sorts of things. Everyone wants to root for a story. So if you begin with the fact that everyone that you're going to tell your story for is rooting for you to win at the end, it makes telling the story a little bit easier too. And you don't get there by only sticking to strict facts. You do kind of want to tell a little bit of that story. I find that the behind-the-scenes approach is often really helpful. This is Wes Anderson on the set of one of his movies. And it's just this like weird side shot of him. I love this. What you need to think about, that's right, it is Moonrise Kingdom. What you need to think about as a founder and a CEO is that a core piece of your job I always remember Eric Schmidt at Google talking about this, that your job is really to tell your company's story internally and externally. So you are actually a little bit the human embodiment of your company and that story. So you can't help but talk about your company when you're out on the street or at a cocktail party. You can always tell the companies that are going to do well because it is almost infectious to hear people talk about this. The other thing that companies do is they keep telling their story over and over. So at Google, we had this famous meeting on Fridays. It was called TGIF. My first week at Google, they kept talking about, oh, TGIF, see you at TGIF. And I thought, is there a TGI Fridays nearby? This is ridiculous. I can't believe that this tech company would go to TGI. Well, I guess so. But what they did is they used that as an opportunity to tell their company's story internally. Stories are important. When my friends at Twitter started their company and they started getting bigger, they started hosting something called Tea Time. It was an opportunity to tell their company's story. And they still have it today. I was at Twitter this morning for breakfast. They were setting up for tea time. I don't know why they do it at 10 a.m. on a Thursday, but that's what they were doing. As a founder, you're going to tell your story over and over and over again. It's not a deck. It's the truth. It's the real thing that you live every day, and you have to get good at it. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to know your audience, right? So put yourself in the mindset of your audience. You know, in between rounds of golf and hands of poker and kite surfing for some investors, they happen to look at a lot of pitches. And when I say a lot, I mean sometimes that can be like 8 to 10 pitches a day, back to back, coffee. Do you know how many coffees these poor VCs drink every day? A recent sample that I did among my friends that are angel investors and VCs, they said they still see between like 3 to 5 pitches a day, and these are people who I consider good ones, and they still kind of stack the deck towards seeing a lot of pitches. But from biotech to e-commerce, from wrapping your cars and advertising to a chat application, they see lots of different things. They see the next iPhone app that's going to displace Salesforce and Snapchat all in the same morning. And the only way it makes sense for these investors to be able to invest at all is to have a couple of things. The first thing that most investors have is they have a thesis, right? Maybe after their first year investing, they go, I've seen too much, right? We need to come up with some way, some reason behind our investment strategy. So they come up with these ways to say, well, we see a lot of e-commerce, but which are the ones that are going to win? And sometimes it seems kind of arbitrary, but putting myself in their shoes, I completely understand why you should have a thesis. So they try and recognize patterns, right? If they see something and they've analyzed something and they say, okay, well, Uber does this, right? That's why you hear these Uber for X, right? Because they're trying to rationalize, they're trying to pattern match and say, okay, I understand that business, I can invest. I can open my checkbook and write a check because I now think I have some sort of rationale around that. So if you come in with your deck out of place behind, for professional investors who are seeing a lot of deals every single day and you don't know your story very well, it's almost over before it's begun. The other thing I would do is do your research. If you're taking a meeting with a professional investor, you need to know what their existing investments are. If you're Lyft, do you go to Uber's investors? No, you don't, right? You make sure that you know exactly who you're speaking to. So I did a little bit of homework for you already. So because I have friends at August Capital and Bowery Capital Foundation, SV Angel, Softtech, Resolute, and I even asked some angel friends of mine, Rich Chen and Brad Garlinghouse. I said, what's the one piece of advice that you would want to give founders before they pitch you? And here are a couple of the things they said. It's a really long list, and I'm happy to share it out as a blog post later. But here are a couple of things they said. So David Hornick, investor in lots of things. I think August Capital was like first money in for some of the biggest names in Silicon Valley. he led with this. I didn't tell him what I was doing, and he led with tell a story, right? He wants to hear a story. He sees all these pitches. He wants to hear a story. What problem are you solving, and why do you care about that problem? He wants to hear that passion. Let's see. Charles Hudson kind of cuts us to the quick here. If you don't have them in the first 5 minutes, it's probably over by minute 10. So really grab them right away. David Lee over at SV Angel, the power of the demo is huge, right? Which brings me to a slightly different point, which is sometimes it's not about a deck at all, right? If you're having that first coffee meeting and this is the first money in and you have zero money in your company, maybe a deck isn't appropriate, right? Maybe slides are not appropriate at all. So when I go through this Series A deck, that would not be appropriate for a first-time meeting. Maybe have something available if they ask to see, but what they're going to want to see is the app. They want to hear your passion and all that sort of stuff. David Lee's one caveat to this rule is, unless you're in an obtuse industry, don't start with top-down. Market size is X, market inefficiency is Y. As professional investors, they kind of understand these markets. Fair point. So the other thing I asked was, what do you find most generally missing from these presentations that you see? And it surprised me, some of the things that they were talking about, but they said team bios. Sometimes people don't even talk about the tech team that they've built behind the product. They want to know why. Why did you start the company? What was the burning passion that you had? Why are you doing this? What's the genesis of the idea? Did it start as something else and now it's become this and you have some amazing learning from that? What is your clear definition of traction? Like what does success look like? If you have built and you're successful, what does this look like? Very funny, I had one investor who said, oh, well, you should definitely always talk about the total available market. And then the very next response from a friend of mine said, I don't want to hear any of this like total available market stuff. So conflicting advice, maybe put it in the appendix to have if somebody wants to hear about that. I think it depends. It's highly business dependent. If you're in an e-commerce business or if you're in an enterprise business, you're probably going to want to talk about the market size. Most importantly, why you? Why are you uniquely qualified to solve this problem? You're telling this story. You have a story yourself. Why you? Did you grow up in Florida and that's why you're the best? You're going to be the best jet ski manufacturer in the world, and you grew up in the water. What's the story there? Dig deeper. The other one, a friend of mine who's an angel investor said, I hate it when people ignore the fact that they have competitors, right? You're displacing someone, you're a solution for something, you have competitors, go ahead and talk about it, right? Be honest with yourself. And then the other one was, somebody said, sometimes people never get to a product demo, and that really was surprising to him. So let's get pitch perfect here. Sequoia is kind of the granddaddy here, right? Sequoia Capital has been around forever. They backed YouTube. They backed, I could stop talking after YouTube. They've backed 1 million people. They like calling decks business plans because at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's the plan for your business. Normally, I think of a business plan as being like reams and reams of paper that talks about, what your head count looks like at a certain time and all this stuff. And they said, actually, if you go to Sequoia Capital, their website, they have this all super well spelled out for you, right? They say that it's state your purpose. What's the problem? What's the solution? Why now? What's the market size? What are all these things? You should absolutely check out Sequoia Capital's website because they do have all of this and they go deep on each of these things. I've used it as a rough guide for a long time. But it's sort of the industry standard. I always get upset when I go to a coffee shop and their ordering process is slightly different than Starbucks. Starbucks has trained everyone in the world to, you go up to the mic and you say, yes, I'd like a cappuccino, and then you step to the side and you go over here. Have you ever been to a coffee shop that's like, all right, take a number and then go sit down, and you're like, this throws me way off. If you stick to the Sequoia business plan, any investor in the world is going to understand you. You deviate from that and you risk, being misunderstood, I guess is my point.
Hey, everybody, let me take a moment to tell you about HostGator. Stop thinking about the business you want to do and just start doing it. Yes, it is the first step for web hosting and domain names. Go to HostGator.com, and it's a one-stop shop for everything you need. WordPress installs, drag and drop builders, easily set up custom email addresses, and do in-house design, SEO, and pay-per-click services. And it all starts at like $4 a month hosted. It's incredible with VPS and dedicated service, 24/7 support, 365 days a year. And we use it here at This Week in Startups because it's super, super affordable, especially compared to some other hosting options, which have gotten very expensive for us. And we were able to use HostGator to save literally thousands and thousands of dollars a month of my money. This is kind of important. And HostGator is saving me, Jason Calacanis, thousands of dollars a month, which I appreciate. The first 100 This Week in Startups listeners can sign up using the promo code TWiST25, and they will get a 1-year HostGator Hatchling package for just $25. Yes, that's the 1 year of HostGator Hatchling package for just $25 if you use TWiST25, and that includes unlimited disk space, bandwidth, unlimited MySQL databases, unlimited email accounts. I mean, everything's unlimited at this place, and it's super affordable. And don't worry if you're not one of the first 100, you can still save 30% using the promo code TWiST. So you have 2 promo codes there. Try the TWiST25, and if not, use TWiST, and you're going to get a great deal. Welcome to the This Week in Startups family, HostGator. We really appreciate the support you've been giving us and the technical team, Jacob and Jackie, as we continue to scale our business, and our expenses got very expensive, and we decided we would shop it around and see if we could find a good deal, and HostGator was an amazing deal. Again, we're saving thousands a month, and you can start for as little as, a couple dollars a month. It's a really great service. Go ahead and check out HostGator.com and thank them on Twitter. Welcome to the family, HostGator.
All right, what do we got here? Nothing. A whole lot of nothing. All right. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about do's and don'ts. So we're going to talk about a deck, so might as well go ahead and talk about some of these things. Keep it short, 10 to 15 slides. Maybe try and use not more than 10 if you can at all help it, and if you have to squeeze in that 11th, pull it in. This is a funny one. I talked to Jason about this as well. Don't forward your deck. A deck, in my mind, is a performance piece. If you're telling your story, if I'm super passionate about this, how am I going to express that through a PDF, right? This is really, it's difficult to get across, why your cake startup is going to be the best one in the world if you don't feel the, that infectious enthusiasm in the room when you're delivering this. So, maybe after the in-person meeting, go ahead and forward that. But if somebody says, just forward me your deck, it's almost a wash whether or not they're going to invest at that point anyway. I would try and get that coffee meeting. Do practice your pitch. It's very obvious after having been through this process before that, your first couple of pitches might not go well. But go ahead and practice it in the mirror, practice it with your co-founder, practice, practice, practice. You might learn things like, hey, it's good to have a glass of water nearby in doing some of these pitches. You're going to learn something. Don't get spun. When you're giving a pitch, oftentimes what happens is someone in the room will ask a question that seems off base or you haven't thought about, or it makes you mad, or more likely than not, there's somebody in the room who's like maybe halfway falling asleep, or you're looking at visual cues and that's going to like throw you off. But more often than not, one of the partners in a VC firm is going to ask you something and they're going to say, well, have you thought about this? I mean, that's ridiculous. I can't believe that you guys haven't even thought about this thing, right? So, which brings me to my point after. Take the note. Just take the note. If somebody says, I really don't like the way that you've approached this, good point. Thanks. We'll get back to you, or I'd be happy to follow up on that thing. The pitch meeting is not the time to get into an argument, right? You're telling a story, and if somebody has an argument with the story, it's weird, right? Like, you're like, this is my story, and I'm sticking to it, right? So remember both of those things. Let's go back. Let's go back in time, all the way back in time to 2013. a young Taylor Swift had just dropped an album, I assume. I don't know. Anyway, so here's the sample pitch. The sample pitch I'm going to show you is for an app called Boxer. I had worked on this end of 2012, and so it won't be weird. I'm going to give you a little pre-pitch on this one. Basically, I'd come up with the idea for an email app. I looked out at my available friends from Google and AOL and all sorts of other places, and most folks were busy or had just been acquired somewhere else, and I thought, I need a technical co-founder. So instead of a technical co-founder, what I found was a company doing something similar already in Austin, Texas, and worked with the CEO. We ended up merging our ideas, and I worked with them for 6 months on getting this up and off the ground as Boxer, help with the pitch process and rebranding and things like that. So you'll see that in this slide deck. So a couple of things to remember. Slack was not a thing when we were doing this. All of the references that you'll see in this into our competitors, I would probably include lots of different people as competitors. And we had already raised a decent amount of money on seed, like maybe 800K, something like that. So this is really a true like Series A deck. We were going out for like $3.5 million, and we got it. So it worked. Yay us. So here we go. I'll take another drink of water. Hey, thanks for having us out here today. Really appreciate you taking the meeting with us. My name's Jason Shellen. I've done lots of things before. I, most recently had done Brizzly, sold that to AOL. I'm here with my co-founder, Andrew I. He's the CEO. He's a proven entrepreneur. He's a former NASA rocket scientist. And as you can see from the rest of our team, we have some really, really interesting folks involved in our project. But before we get too deep into things, I just wanted to let you know, since we talked last, like here are some of the milestones that we've been through. As you know, we founded TaskBox in May 2012, launched the first iPhone app, raised a convertible note, shipped it in March, but we're really gearing up for this huge rebrand as Boxer, right? So what's the problem we're trying to approach? The problem we're trying to approach is that email is unfair, and especially on your mobile device. So we know that email is the source of more than half of all your tasks, right? So I'm going to take a step out here for a second and say, I set up the problem. I wanted to show how I'm going to address this or why it's a real problem, right? So there's a problem, and why is it a real problem? And referencing actual data. People love to reference actual data. And as you can see that mobile opens are exceeding desktop opens, right? Nice graph, got the link to actual research in there. And of course, we are the solution. So we're going to transform the mail experience. So the one thing I would say is don't read your slides to the investors, right? If they're all looking forward or they're looking at you telling the story and you're basically saying, look, the one thing that we wanted to focus on was helping you triage, respond, and manage. Like pick a couple of the keywords out of the slide and maybe repeat those. And I'll go back. Because we're telling a story, we're going to say triage, respond, and manage like 1,000,000 times because we want that to be like, oh, I get it. The reason that this thing works is because it's solving. Got it. That's the solution, right? So how do we do that? Well, one of the things that we did with Boxer is we kind of reimagined the inbox. And we know that people like these swipe gestures. And in fact, there are even some popular consumer apps that do this now, like Mailbox. But the one thing that we haven't seen yet is no one has added like to email. You can actually just swipe, hit like, and it dashes off an email that says, Jason liked your note. And so again, I'm going to step aside for a second. Sometimes people have a question at that moment, right? Wait, you added like to email? Like, how do you do that? That's weird. Go ahead, answer the question, but don't get spun. Try and get right back to your slides. So what I'm going to show you right now is, this is something I would recommend to all of you. Let me see if it'll start. There we go. I would have a video for any demo. If you are doing a pitch, have a video, because the possibility of it going wrong. Who's the gentleman who had a pitch here tonight that was like, that's rough. When you're in the middle of a demo and it does not go well, that really hurts your case, right or wrong. It's better to have some sort of video. Now this is like a marketing video that we just dropped in here to kind of show all of the different things that our app did. But you don't have to get that fancy. It could just be, you know, you showing how to use this thing or the core feature that you want people to learn from. And so we went a little overboard with this thing, but what was nice about it was we did kind of touch on all of the features of the app. And look, it does all this, right? A little silly. And actually the video that we used was much more succinct. And then what we did is we would like to show a slide that would kind of like peek behind the curtain, right? So no one's seen this yet. I'm showing this to you for the first time. Feel special. I'm letting you behind the scenes of the story, right? In fact, Boxer will even hook into third-party systems to allow you to accept, decline, or give a maybe. And that could be a system like an internal system or a Salesforce install or some custom plugin. Boxer is all about enabling your productivity in whichever way possible, including these back-end systems that we can support. And then we kind of, again, we're making up some things. So why is this important? Because we believe the atomic element of work is email. And we're turning those into like quickly and easily done tasks. So the opportunity is to become Boxer TRM, right? Triage response management, right? So we know that social task management in the form of Asana and things like that is getting big, but we think that we can do it from mobile before anyone else. We're going to disrupt business process automation. Honestly, I don't even understand that last one, but my CEO understands that very crisply and would answer any questions about that one. So what does the competition look like? Lots of people are trying to do this, but you know, there are high switching costs for using some of these things. And we know that people go back to email over and over again. In fact, a bunch of those things generate email, and then where are they? They're back to Boxer using that. So what platforms are we going to use? What's our market strategy? We would use those as opportunities to talk even more deeply about that. So here's our strategy. Consumer adoption, people walk in the door with our app, and they say, hey, I'm using Boxer. They start using likes. They start using a couple of the features, the Dropbox integration. Win the user, win the team, and win the enterprise. And that's actually what happened. Talk a little bit about our financing. Hey, we have this convertible note we've done. Here are the terms of that thing. We're raising $3 million. Here's how we expect to use funds, and be prepared for questions around that. Why do you need so many sales and marketing? Why do you need so many engineering? Why? You have all the answers, you know, up here because it's your story. Here's our current roadmap. These are some of the things that we're going to expect to do. And end of slide, right? And that's it. So what I did want to talk about a little bit here is I think that when I told our Boxer story to people, what ended up happening quite often was that was the jumping off point for lots of other storytelling, right? That began the, well, how many engineers do you have today? And hey, you know, what do you need to do to compete, to build an Android app? We didn't even have an Android app back then. All of those things were openers, right? So I told my story, and now it was time to engage. Follow-up meetings, second meetings. Hey, can you prepare another deck that's specifically about how you're going to get enterprise sales? So I think when I think about that storytelling process, I'll be candid, that was probably 25 pitches, maybe 30 pitches, probably 10 of them to the same exact people, you know, plus one, right? So that happened over and over again, where people would say, I like it, but I want to invite another partner in, right? That's fine. You're happy to tell your story over and over again because it is the, you know, you embody that and you can absolutely tell that story. So I think I'm way ahead of time. Hey, look at that. Twitter. Am I way ahead of time? Am I ready for questions? There we go.
Are you done?
I'm done. All done. Sorry.
Bryce is finding a microphone or something like that, right? Is that what you're doing? He is. That's awesome. So I want to just quickly address or repeat or, touch on something that you said. When we went through, it's a super quick story, when we went through the first incubator, about halfway through, 2/3 of the way through, Jason said, can you grade us? Tell me how the incubator's doing. Is this useful for you? What should we do more of? What should we do less of? Who's your favorite speaker? Things like that, right? And the one piece of negative feedback that he got, which I violently disagreed with, I had a really bad reaction to it, was that one of my, my brethren, whatever they are, classmates, there we go, thank you, Bryce, said, we spend too damn much time on the pitch. Nobody's helping me find an iOS developer. Nobody's helping me raise money. I'm going to run out of money. This sucks. Nobody's helping me build my team. You're not helping me make my product better. So all we're doing is pitch training. This sucks. That was the feedback. And I heard that, and I had seriously, I had a very visceral, violent reaction. I like the person who said that. I kind of want to hit that person. This is really weird because they're so wrong. If you are good at your pitch, if you can tell your story, you can get investor money. You can find an iOS developer and get them to join you on your mission. You can build out the rest of your team. You can find customers. You make a better product because the product you're making every week through this incubator series has to match the story you're telling. And if you tell a great story and your product is in synchronization with your story, then your product is awesome. And it's mind-blowing. And people are going to buy into you, and they're going to invest in you, which is the whole point of this, to make everybody eminently investable. And so you touched on both of those things, telling a great story and being super investable and attractive to investors and not losing their attention and really getting them excited, the motivation, because it does come down to there's 10 different messaging apps, 10 different cake building apps. What the heck? I want to invest in the one where I know that person is going to would rather die than give up on this mission.
Right.
You need to know that. That's why you do a leave behind. That's why you don't forward a deck in advance, right? Mm-hmm. So I just think that's such an important thing, telling a great story. And then there's one more thing that you said that I want to also reiterate, which is people often forget a really important thing about telling the story. You don't have one story. You have 80% of a story that you tell to different audiences in slightly different ways. So the story that you tell to investors includes when you're going to run out of money. The story that you tell to customers is 80% the same, but you are never going to run out of money. Join us, be part of this, because we're going to be here forever, right? But investors know when you're going to die, when you're out. Right. The team, your talent, that's another one. Partners, other businesses who can also help you sell into your customer base. 4 different giant audiences that you tell your story to. And that's externally. Those are the ones you haven't landed yet. In each of those camps, there are people that you've landed. There's a talent that's already joined you on your mission. You can't stop telling a story to your co-founders, to everybody. The person who's running the company, their job is to tell a story and never stop telling a story, and the product flows from that. The investor money flows from that. The new investors, the existing investors. Jason talks about you can't skip a month of investor updates because you have to tell your story to the ones you've already got, not just the ones you're trying to get. Don't forget the ones you already have.
It's a little bit of being honest with yourself, right? So I think, so just to take it down a notch a little bit as well. Your job is hard. Being an entrepreneur is hard. You signed up for it, but it doesn't make it any easier, right? I deal with, friends who run big companies worth $1 billion who are still I get a call that's oh man, things are rough with the founder. Or, gosh, I really thought we'd be here by now, but we're not. And it's, on the one hand, you can be hey, hashtag first world problems. But if you're living it and that's your truth, then hey, that's really tough. That's difficult. We're running out of money. That sucks no matter if you just ran out of $1 billion or if you ran out of $500, right? Running out of money doesn't feel good. So I think there's a level of honesty that you have to have with yourself. Take a deep breath and then tell your story, right? So tell your story on top of that. How are we going to do this? How are we going to do that, right? And a lot of it is hustle. A lot of it is getting better at product. A lot of it is, taking that extra hour at work because you're going to, call 10 more potential customers. Or you go and sit at Pete's Coffee and pester 10 people who come in. Hey, I'll buy your cup of coffee if you tell me. Well, what do you think of this UI? We're not sure about it. Can you tell us about it? It's going that extra mile. So I think that when it comes to pitches, it's that same thing. You have to have that honesty up front to be able to make a really, really good story out of that thing. And I think the other thing to remember too is that with stories, the stories that are like, well, I don't know, I had a pretty good early life, and then I went to Harvard, and everything was awesome, and I made a bunch of money, and I don't know, I'm probably going to die, you know, I'm like 99 or 100. It was awesome. What a boring story, right? Like, the stories that really matter are the ones that have faced adversity. Hey, we tried this, it didn't work out, but you know what we learned? This is what we learned. That's why we went after this thing. Why am I the best person on the planet? Because I've had my teeth kicked in 10 times around this one idea of personal publishing. I, you know, absolutely, you know, can't let it go because it's my life's work, and I absolutely believe everyone in the world should have access to tell their story, right? That's much more interesting. So use the struggle, use the pain, use all that sort of stuff to make your story better, to make it something that people want to listen to, and why you guys, right? Why, you know, why are you the best woman on the planet to, you know, lead that that startup? Thank you. Questions? Go for it. I'm sorry, David.
So this is a really tactical question, which is, I've heard this advice before, don't forward the deck. And yet, like, every meeting I have with an angel or somebody, they're like, will you send me the deck in advance so I can get smart on my market, on your market? Or, you know, some version of that.
So I guess
do you have
there are a couple things there. One is, are you talking to investors that don't understand the travel market, right? Maybe they're not the right investor, right? So that could be one thing. The second is, if it's your job to educate somebody about your market, then send them information about the market. It doesn't have to be your deck, right? And look, if you're not worried, go ahead, send the deck. I doubt people are going to take it down the street and say, hey, look, we're going to replicate this guy's business, right? It's not about that. It's more like, do you have them on the hook? Are they on the hook or not, right? Are they into you or not? Brian, I'm sure, has had this happen to him, right? Where you go, you give the pitch, and you walk out, and you're in the parking lot, and you're smiling, and yeah. Not those guys. I don't even want to be in business with those guys, right? Like, they are not the ones, right? She couldn't stop talking about our B2B opportunity. We're not doing B2B, right? Like, knowing yourself, knowing your story enough to know when to walk away from some of those things. I think that's part of the skill as well. But I think there is that part of, like, hey, if you need to help somebody hurdle over the problem of, like, can I invest in you or not? Sure, you're there for them. You're absolutely happy to call, follow up, come back, do whatever to get that meeting. But, you know, I don't know. My personal thing is somebody say, hey, can I get the deck? One, they're asking because they want to see, can they get the deck? You could say, actually, we've made it a policy that we're not sharing our deck with us because, you know, we just don't. And stop talking. It's hard for me to do. I love to talk. And stop talking, that's hard advice, right? We don't do that.
I'll give you just a tiny answer on that. So when I've done talks on stage, they always say, great, give us your slides. We're going to put them at, you know, on the, you know, Cloud Summit or these amazing things that I've spoken at. But my slides are actually usually ones that they don't function without me there. It's actually surprising how broken and like crippled they are without me, because it's like one word. And then I'm there to explain that, because I'm not going to read you a bunch of lines, right? Second one is like another word or a picture. It doesn't make any sense without me. So you can actually say, look, I don't pack a lot of stuff in. I don't make it an eye chart. I put some stuff up there, but I really have to be there to explain it, because I may have one word on the screen. It's kind of a waste of your time if I send that. When can we meet? I can do it in 5 minutes. So.
Right. And it's another piece of that. I put this one up to remind me of that as well, right? A lot of times when you're giving a presentation, you don't, you know, I feel like this is like really basic public speaking stuff, and I'm sure Jason would kick your teeth in if he thought that you weren't good at these things. But sometimes that's a cue for you. When you see that slide, then that's, oh yeah, this is the part where I talk about knowing your audience and all that sort of stuff, as much as it is a visual guide for people. If I have a lot of text to put up on the screen, I don't read it, and because I assume they're all, you know, very well-educated people who can read a screen and write a check, right? So a lot of times I'll, you know, fun it up with photos and all sorts of stuff, but you don't want to be too distracting as well. I'm doing this on purpose because I'm trying to be theatrical for a presentation, I might tone it down one notch for investors.